So I'm Sandra Scheller, and this is my 5th year of doing art from the Holocaust. I got into doing art from the Holocaust and in the Holocaust and during the Holocaust because my mother, who was a Holocaust survivor, wanted to come to Comic-Con. If Stan Lee could do it, she could do it. She did it in a wheelchair. And so, Heidi was gracious enough to honor my mom, and I just want you to know that our panels, art in the Holocaust and during the Holocaust, are on YouTube, so you can see what we're talking about. Now, you probably noticed that there's a name missing, Stephen Smith. Stephen called me this morning. He's normally my moderator, and for your safety, he came down with, not with COVID, but tested, and he didn't want to do anything to you. So, Stephen, this one's for you as well as all of you out there. Talk a little bit about propaganda. I know what you're all thinking. You're saying, where's the surprise? Where's the surprise?
I don't know where.
Yeah, we don't know where the surprise is. Wait till you find out who the surprise is. You're going to love this one. So let's talk about that Aryan. Let's talk about Nazi propaganda. Who is blonde hair and blonde hair, blue eyes, and beautifully shaped? Well, it isn't Adolf Hitler, is it? No, it is not. So when they were doing these kinds of things, and some of you who've been to my panels before, you might be saying, well, it's a little bit of a repeat there. Yeah, it is. But the bottom line is that it's the German blood. It's that German blood. And for those of you who are in San Diego, I don't know if you know, but at the Chula Vista Public Library, I have an exhibit called Remember Us, the Holocaust. And if you think of those letters, Remember Us, the Holocaust. It spells R-U-T-H. It's open during library hours, and you can see what the stories of 13 Holocaust survivors are, and it's free. So I've done everything that I've tried to do to bring together Holocaust awareness, and one great place to do it is here at Comic-Con. Now let's talk about the eternal Jew. Okay, I'm Jewish. Do I look like that? No. So for somebody to portray Jewish people like this, there's a real problem. And what about this children's book called The Poisonous Mushroom? Der Giftpilz. Der Giftpilz. So we're going to teach you a word today. Gift, as far as what we're doing here. The poisonous mushroom. So imagine that you are in your school class, and all of a sudden, this is in your children's book. Daddy, someday when I have my own farm, no Jew will ever enter my house. Is this fair? Well, this was what was rotated in the schools. By the way, having a Holocaust exhibit, do you know what it's like when students come into the room and you say, so tell me what you know about the Holocaust, and they go like this. I'm serious. Yeah. So that's why we're here. That's why we're here. Well, let's talk about Man's Search for Meaning. How many hands here have read Man's Search for Meaning? And Viktor Frankl. His grandson's sitting next to me right now. Yeah. So surprise, surprise. History and his story. Very interesting how Alex and I met. Alex, I'm going to go ahead and let you talk, and then I'm going to interrupt you.
Sure. There we go.
Hi.
Well, it's really an honor to be here, and thank you for the invitation, and thank you for being here. So some of you read, as it's always said, the book. He wrote a lot of books, but this was a book that the book he's most known for because it was his personal account of his experiences in the Holocaust. Now, my grandfather was a psychiatrist. When you ask him, what do you do? He said, I'm a doctor, that's all. And he took his profession very seriously in that he saw that as a doctor, you're responsible for not just fixing whatever physical needs somebody has, but also their emotional and also their, I want to say spiritual. He used a different word, noetic. In German you have different words for spiritual. One has a religious connotation and the other does not. The other just means who you are as a person on an existential level. And he was the first to recognize that and to respect that about human beings and to put that in the center of his approach to healing. He had learned from Sigmund Freud and from Alfred Adler, but at some point said, I'm tired of this. It's all reductionistic, kind of reducing us to drives and instincts and reaction formations. And I think that as human beings, we're always, even if we're limited or if we're challenged, we are always free to decide who we want to be and how we want to act in this world. And he could prove that. He would see that with people who were going through difficult times. And later on, when he was put in a concentration camp, he said, you can take away everything from me, but not this decision of how I'm going to react to this situation, what I'm going to do in this situation. This freedom we always have, and it's an approach to healing that has since been adopted by other approaches to therapy, and I happen to be a therapist and be working with that too. And so, well, here we are.
Do we want to show the video or do we want to talk about the next slide?
Well, we can, yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so
let's do it.
Speaking about humanity, and he always spoke of how...
He always did caricatures, and he knew that one of the things that he lived, but he also included that in his therapy, and he was maybe the first to include that as a therapeutic value, the role of humor and how it helps us as human beings with our capacity to distance ourselves from our own selves and from our own situation, and how this distance can be a very healthy thing, especially in a situation of distress. And this is particularly significant because you see on the back, or rather the front of this was a piece of a recipe paper slip. And so this has his name on it. And his name was Viktor Emil Frankl, but now it's Viktor Israel Frankl. So that was already under the Nazi occupation, or Austria was already part of Nazi Germany. And he was not allowed to call himself a doctor anymore, which he was. He was a neurologist. If you ask him, he always said, I'm just a doctor. So he was now a Fachbehandler, which means, a specialist for problems of the nervous system or of the mind, of the brain. Dr. Viktor Israel Frankl, to kind of make sure that everybody knows that he's Jewish. And there you see he was head of the Rothschild Hospital, which was a position he was assigned to. It was an exclusively Jewish hospital, so he could only treat Jewish patients there. Amazing stories, actually, of how he helped to get people out who were doomed because their diagnosis was schizophrenia, which was a death sentence under the Nazis because they had no tolerance for mental disease. That was a ticket, to be exterminated. So he forged some diagnoses there, but that's a story for another day. There you see, zur ärztlichen Behandlung für Juden, so may only perform with Jews. So this was the time. This was 1941. And then on the back, you see his best friend, Paul Pollack. And so he obviously had just become a father, and he was a very serious man. And this was kind of probably a situation that happened that way. He had just become a dad, and his wife, I think it's his wife, is holding up the baby, and he says, "No, songs. What are you saying to that, Mr. Papa?" And he says, "Well, actually, it kind of looks like my wife, but somehow it actually also looks like me." So completely devoid of humor, and I can imagine my grandfather getting a kick out of that, and that it's kind of a funny, abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation, maybe.
Pretty amazing, huh? So here's a good slide if you guys want to take a photo of it. And let's talk a little bit about the next generation here. How do I know Alex? Because Alex's grandfather saved my grandmother's life. My grandmother, I won't talk too much about this, her dear friend growing up was Walter Frankel, which was Viktor Frankel's brother. And Walter was killed in the concentration camp. And when they were liberated, Viktor saved my grandmother by putting her in an American zone in an isolation so that she could come here. And when I found Alex, what happened is, you know, this thing called Facebook, I posted something on the Viktor Frankl site, and I said, I have something you don't have. And what happened is that Viktor would come to my house and draw pictures during Passover. And Alex said, yep. And during the pandemic, Alex came from Austria to here. And while I was working on my other panel, I let him go through my papers. And what was interesting is they were some of the few papers that Viktor wrote to my grandfather, not Herr Goldschmidt, but hello, Oscar. But his grandfather was my grandmother's lifesaver. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't for your grandfather. I want to talk about Dina Babbitt. Again, where do I get my information from? I learned from Stephen Smith, we learned from Stephen Smith that when you become a Shoah interviewer, every single person that we interview, we treat them with the utmost respect, trying to get as much information as we can. Dina Babbitt might have known my mother because of being an artist and where they studied in Czechoslovakia. So Dina was known as the portrait artist, or the artist who worked with Dr. Mengele. And if you look at this, you can see Dr. Mengele was outraged that she took her time. Notice the details in her eyes. She was only supposed to match skin tones. So in my next video, Karen wanted to be up here, but I told Karen, you're going to be in here. So let's listen to Karen a little bit.
So she goes and she finds a number of people. And after a while, Mengele gets tired of her taking her time choosing people and starts grabbing them and bringing them to her. And she paints, and she paints slowly because as long as she paints, she has a feeling they'll live. And she starts having intimate relationships. They don't speak the same language, but there's an intimacy if you're an artist, as you well know, Sandy, where she's capturing the faces of these people. And there was one in particular, a woman named Celine, a young mother whose baby had just died from lack of milk, who had a blue scarf on. And my mother was painting her slowly, but her main objective, she said, was to capture the desperation in their eyes, because that would communicate to the world what was really happening to the Roma, if she could just get the eyes desperate enough. And as she was painting Celine, Mengele came in and he was angry that she was looking desperate and beautiful. And he grabbed the scarf on her head and shoved it behind her ears and was trying to point out the inferiority of her hairline. And so my mother was obligated to do the hairline. She was given extra rations of bread so that she could work, and she gave them to Celine to keep Celine going. And so there were 12 people all in all that my mother got to know through the intimacy of art and paintings of. And several times during this escapade, several times her life was threatened. The one day that stands out, Sandy, is the day they said they were going to put her mother into the line to be gassed. And my mother said to Mengele, if you do, I'm going to go hold on to the electrified fence. And so they didn't kill my grandmother.
So that's where I get my stories from the truth. They have to be real. If it's not real, we're doing a huge mistake. Neil Adams, how many of you have heard of Neil Adams? Yeah. So imagine that Neil Adams did a cartoon, the greatest form of flattery of Dina's story, being the artist in Auschwitz, painting the back wall with Snow White. and while the Nazis are crying because of what happened with Snow White, they're mass killing Jewish people. And again, the picture can tell 1,000 words, but as Heidi told us earlier when we were outside, tell me what a portrait artist does.
In the hierarchy of types, with maybe still life being at the bottom, portraiture is at the highest of the pecking order. So Dina Babbitt was an extraordinary portrait artist. You know, if you had tools that could save your life, especially in the camps. So not only was she an expert portraiture artist, she was great with color. So she offered Mengele something that was valuable, which is why she slow played it, painted very slowly to try to keep these people alive until he was onto her.
Just so you know, real short, she married Art Babbitt, who drew Goofy. Yeah, just so you know. Yeah. Otto Unger, my mother's teacher, and if you look really carefully, he drew what he saw. In fact, he was such an incredible artist that his fingers were chopped off. And when he ended up going to Auschwitz, he survived. So, how many want to see the inside of Viktor Frankl's house?
I think that might be remarkable. This picture has been painted in a concentration camp by a rather famous professor of arts of the Art Academy of Brno, the capital of Moravia, part of Czechoslovakia. And you see here a group of coffins that were being recycled again and again. And here you see the wall of a fortress. This concentration camp, Terezin, had been a fortress hundreds of years ago. And this was the place where, after the conversion of this fortress city into a concentration camp, better to say a milder form of a concentration camp, a ghetto, the ghetto Terezin, where the corpses were put into the coffins before the rabbi gave his Brucha. And here in one of these coffins I saw the body of my dead father, and under this roof of this barrack my mother gave me her blessing when I went to Auschwitz, without knowing that 1 week later she would be sent to Auschwitz also, but in her case she was directly brought to one of the gas chambers.
Can you imagine this is who came to my house year after year with my grandfather? Pretty amazing. I wanted to show this to you because if it was a photograph, it would be a little too painful to look at, wouldn't it? So it's the artwork. And I know you're sitting here thinking, when is the guy at the end going to speak? So Mr. David Brown, David Beck Brown, I welcome you to our panel.
Present.
Yeah, present.
Yeah, absolutely.
My name is David Beck Brown. I'm an artist, and I've taught art in the federal prison, the state prison, with the witness protection program in a county jail. So I've been around a lot of incarcerated people, and there's a sense about lifers, that there's a calmness because they've accepted their fate, whatever it is. Now,
Can I ask the question to the audience? Who painted this? Ready? Adolf Hitler.
It's a good painting, the composition, the colors. My role is truth in history. Just tell the truth. Don't disguise it. And most of my life I heard that Adolf Hitler was a failed artist. He was not a failed artist. He was a successful artist. The Allies confiscated most of his good art at the end of the war, so they could never be shown again. So what is left is his inferior art. So this particular piece I copied off after Adolf Hitler. It's in chalks and colored pencils, but then I smeared it. Like history erased. We cannot erase history. Disagree with it, disagree with it. Go change it. Now this is another unknown artist. He was a Italian artist, and he went into the caves of northern Italy, where there was a massacre. 335 Italians were shot in the back of the head in this cave, and they were left for dead. It's because Hitler ordered, because of the death of 28 Nazi SS, that 10 people had to be killed.
I'm going to run through them as you're talking, David.
Yes.
I'm going to run through them as
yes,
you're
yes.
talking. Okay, go ahead.
And they got 335. They were 75 Jews. There were people from prison, but they just wanted to execute them. Now, this was in May of 1944, towards the end of the war. They didn't open up the caves until July, so these bodies were sitting there for 4 months. And this one artist walked in with a crew, and they exhumed the dead, most of whom were identified by their names and their families.
Who are you, David?
This is a picture of me during an art show not long ago. I made 48 portraits of people, for lack of a better term, people who I channeled, who have been incarcerated. It's like automatic writing. This is an automatic channeling. And they were worked out with the very basics. It's just gesso and chalk, because people who are incarcerated don't have that many belongings. And so this is charcoal and chalk, and I just painted one after the other after the other. I didn't think it, I didn't overthink it, I just did it.
Did they have names, David?
Oh, and each painting is named after a person in Auschwitz, who was in Auschwitz, you know, with their age and their name. But I didn't want to get a realistic view. I wanted to get an emotional view, you know, the intensity, the expression. Now this little girl, we all know, Snow White, beautiful. She was given a gift, this red apple, and she's clutching the gift.
But, look at the word gift.
Gift gas in German means poison gas. And this is a can that was used of the Zyklon B. I bought a can, you know, that's fairly well preserved, but it was opened with a bayonet or something. Most of the cans were punched open. The reason that they were punched open is because there was a machine. I've always heard that the poison was put through a hole in the roof of a gas chamber or through a wall. But now I found out that it was a sophisticated machine, which they had to lower the Zyklon can opener. They put it in this device on the lower left and punch it out. The gas would go in, it would disperse, and then the next group.
So you can conceptualize an idea by drawing it out before you just build it.
Yeah, it's a schematic, and this is the actual machine that was used. Now, this would not have come to light, but there was an artist in Germany right now who has a display, and he has this large billboard, which 12 feet by 11 feet, and it says Zyklon B, and there's a website. If you look on the website, it shows what manufacturers, what businesses who still work today were part of this execution. Now, because of this, it's all in German, but in 2018, the website was taken down because, because of guilt of people, corporations that are still existing. Now, the bottom painting here, that's like the poison apple. It's the Zyklon B behind a Campbell soup can of black beans. And this is what the artist is showing today. So even though the Holocaust was 70 years ago, its impact is still affecting people. And this is a cartoon that was out a few years ago, Libya and Gaddafi, Iraq, and this man is pitching Zyklon B. It's a German quality.
Thank you so much, Dave. Child of a Holocaust survivor, would you mind standing up?
Grandchildren?
Grandchildren too. So you see, it's up to us now. It's up to us. And with our message that we have, you have no idea how wonderful it is to be with this panel and this group. We've come a long way. I do miss Ruthie. Don't think I don't miss her. We're going to tell you kind of a funny story. All right, Alex? So what happened when somebody mailed a package to your grandfather?
Well, as you now know, the word gift means something completely different in German. And so actually my grandfather used to be in San Diego all the time from the 1970s on, and he used to teach here, and he loved it. My first memories are San Diego, actually, of my life. And he used to send gifts home. And so he would put gifts in for the family, and one package went to my grandmother's mother, who was of that generation, was born in 1900, that didn't learn English in school. And so when the package arrived,
You're all laughing.
it had the word gift all over it. So when my grandparents arrived a couple of months later, the package was unopened in her apartment. I said, "Why didn't you open that?" "Well, it said gift. It says poison on it. I'm not going to open it."
So it's really fun when we have humor. Are there any questions? If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. We'd love to hear what your questions are. Yes, sir.
I believe now there's only 23 states in the U.S. that have mandatory Holocaust education. Can you comment on what is being done to try to get all the states?
Yeah, it's really terrible. Heidi and I talk about this all the time. And my comment to that is thank God for Comic-Con, because they allow us to do this. They believe in us. And there are a lot of Holocaust survivors. In fact, you're sitting next to a child of a Holocaust survivor, Roxanne Schindler. So for those of you who know Rose Schindler, this is her daughter. And what happens is that while Holocaust survivors are out speaking in schools, I try to find places where they're not. And then my goal is to get that out there. And with Shoah interviews, can you agree that once that we start doing Shoah interviews with people and they've spoken and they've understood for the first time stuff that they've had inside of them, that they want to do it? Next week, I'm on a military base for 4 days, and I'll be speaking with a 94-year-old Holocaust survivor. We have plays that people are doing. In San Diego right now, we've got one of the greatest plays with the greatest review called Witnesses. And I could elaborate on it, but I'm telling you, don't walk, run to get tickets to see this, because it's really incredible. Okay, I was given a dress that my grandmother wore in Auschwitz, for those of you who have followed me, and it became a logo. With Alex, can you imagine that you have the plethora of information, because he's your grandfather, but think about two people who are on the panel who want to do this. because they care. And that is really to be applauded, so I'll be the first on that one, guys. Do you have any other questions? Yes, over here.
Do you have any art books that you recommend from this era? Just seeing this from looking at the series, I've never heard of art.
You know, when I think about art books, I can't, Lily Renee, who's one of our first ones, who is a female, and I think she's 100 or 101 now, and what she did with Trina Robbins, oh my God, Trina, what Trina has brought to the forefront, I believe the mouse needs to be read. It must be read. And I just think that with everything that we do, there are a lot of films, documentaries. I'm going to pass the mic down and see if there's anybody who would you recommend, Alex? There's this guy by the name of Viktor Frankl, and when I look at his drawings on YouTube, and I see if you weren't here, I would have done this, let me tell you. He really is a mentor because of the fact that there's a meaning behind it. So I think that by Googling and picking and choosing, do I make the recommendation of Helga's book, which is, they drew what they saw.
The artist David Olaire, who was a Sonderkommando survivor, he drew art because there was no pictures of the crematoriums, or anything, it was all destroyed. So it was very historical value of his art. I don't know if you can comment on his artwork.
Sure. My next panel is at 3:30. I'll be doing movement inside the cosplay costume. It's been wonderful to see you. That's over in room 29, so let's stand up if you can.